Welcome, Sega fans, fight fans, do we have a show for you? This evening, in the red corner, you have me, Dan, the Mega Driver, and in the blue corner, he's the barn to my Raxel, it's James the Segaholic. How you doing, mate?
Your mama's crap!
I was counting on that.
You set them up and I just bat them in the park, mate. That's
Or throw him into the cage, mate.
I was. Come back for the second round with no clothes on.
Yeah, I don't walk around naked, I walk around with broken armour.
Aye, that's it. Par for the course, mate.
How you doing, mate? You good?
Aye, no bad, mate. Was playing a wee bit of Virtua Fighter 5 on the 360 before we came on, so because obviously the topic we're doing today is all about fighting games, so was having a wee shot of that before I came on. So I'm good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Bit of a crazy day, but I won't get into that. I was playing a little bit of Saturn Bomberman, so something completely not related to the topic that we're discussing today, but. No, I picked that off the shelf. It's been a while since I played that one. It's multiplayer on that is brilliant, but I ain't got. Well, I say I haven't got 9 friends to play it with. I haven't got one at the moment. I mean, to play it with yourself, but you're hundreds of miles away. Well, maybe come April.
Couple of months, mate. Couple of months.
But no, the single player on it's pretty good. I've never finished it though, so
good fun.
I'm gonna have a stab at it until I get bored or stuck again.
No, it's great fun. That's a cracking game.
So today then, mate, as you said, it's fighting is the order of the day.
Yes, mate. And 3D fighting, to be precise. We're going to go through the history of 3D fighting games on the SEGA Saturn.
Yeah, so especially since everyone always talks about the Saturn being a 2D fighting powerhouse, and obviously you and I have spoke before at length about the 4 megabyte kart games, X-Men versus Street Fighter, Marvel versus Street Fighter. We had the whole Capcom episode. There's classics there that everyone knows about, but I don't think the Saturn 3D fighters get a fair shake, to be honest.
No, and the thing is as well, obviously that kind of Japanese library plays a massive part as well. You know that there's quite a few kind of rarities on there, maybe ones that people haven't heard of. So what we're going to do is, I think this will be like a kind of 2-parter. We're going to cover the kind of the history of the more mainstream ones, and then we're going to follow that up with the rarities. And there is some absolute belters in there, some rubbish as well, but some goodies as well. So we're going to go with the kind of chronological order of the kind of mainstream ones for this episode.
Yeah, so we've got the milestone games in here, the first and last, and all the big ones in between. And some of them are hits, some of them are misses, but not too many. I think we disagree on at least one of these. But I think, obviously, when it comes to the Sega Saturn, mate, we've discussed it at length before. It all starts with the game that revolutionised not just the fighting genre, but gaming as we know it wouldn't be where it was today without Virtua Fighter.
Aye, it's the one that started it all, really. You know, it's to say, again, looking back at it, 1994. You know, you're looking at playing this, you know, in the arcades, and obviously it comes to the Saturn in that kind of November launch window in Japan. And it was a game that changed the course of history. You know, if it wasn't for Virtua Fighter, maybe if Sega had brought it out later on, maybe Sony wouldn't have seen it and they wouldn't have changed tact. But it's very much one of those kind of sliding doors moments in gaming. I think everybody was still kind of quite happy with the kind of 2D and the kind of pseudo 3D. Obviously, you had like the Super FX chip for the Super Nintendo, and you had the chip that was on obviously the Virtua Racing cartridge for the Mega Drive, and you had that kind of, which was impressive enough. You know, even on the Mega Drive Mini 2, playing Virtua Racing, I still think, how the hell's a Mega Drive doing that? I know the frame rate's not anywhere near the arcade version, but it's a Mega Drive running Virtua Racing.
Yeah, I know.
So, it's a proper sliding doors title, Virtua Fighter. Changed the course of the industry, and again, as a port, I think, you know, we've spoken about it at length on here before, kind of much maligned wrongly retrospectively, I think.
Yeah.
Gets a lot of unwarranted, unfair criticism. I think people forget the impact that it had back then, the kind of impression that it made. And I think there's this whole thing as well where, you know, you obviously had the first Tekken that came out shortly after on the PS1, then you had Toshinden, which was, you know, obviously more texture looking, more texture mapped, sort of blurrier, smoother looking kind of edges. And I think maybe people look back at that and sort of gravitate towards that a bit more and look at Virtua Fighter with, oh, it's aged really badly, but I think it's aged really, really gracefully. I know we've spoken about it on here again, the amount of times we've said about Virtua Fighter having this timeless look. You know, we're going to talk about Remix in due course, but always think that Remix really does take the soul out of Virtua Fighter. It just doesn't feel at all like the same game. But I love Virtua Fighter 1. Been
So
a big
do I.
fan of it as well. It speaks for itself, mate. It's a monumental title in gaming history.
No, it really is, mate. And I was thinking about it today, actually. Obviously, we're always thinking about Sega. But at the time of recording, Star Fox, or Star Wing, as we knew it in the West, has just celebrated its 30th anniversary. And I was trying to piece in my... Sorry? Another one, yeah. And I was trying to piece in my head because, yeah, it'll be the 30th anniversary of Virtua Fighter this year. In the arcades, obviously the Saturn version came out in 94, but the arcade version came out in 93. And I was trying to think, did Starwing come out before? So Starwing was obviously, you know, Virtua Racing came out in 92, and Starwing came out in 93. But you look at Starwing, and I love Starwing. Huge, you know, probably my favourite game on the SNES. But then, you know, there's something timeless about the look in the same way that there is about Virtua Fighter. Someone's asking me, which do you prefer, Star Fox, or Star Fox 64? And I said, well, 64 is probably objectively better, but there's just something about those flat shaded polygons. That look is just so alluring, and it's the same with Virtua Fighter. It's just different, and it's just a window into that time that you just can't really replicate. And I know we've had a few homages to Model 1 games in recent years, and they're very nice. But there's just something about the way that it's rendered, and Virtual Racing to an extent as well, that just hits differently.
Aye, there's been a couple of was it Hot Shots Racing or something?
I think it's Hot Shots Racing, yeah.
Yeah, and you can see what they're trying to do, but it's not as if like Virtua Fighter and Virtua Racing weren't clean looking. They were very crisp and kind of bold, but excuse me, I think the kind of, as you say, the way it's rendered, it's almost like it's trying too hard to look old, that it kind of looks false. It's I can't put my finger on it, but it doesn't capture that feel. Like, you could put Virtua Racing on, like even the Switch version of Virtua Racing is brilliant. I had a Switch very briefly, Switch Lite, and I had Virtua Racing on that. I got it at the sale for like £4. Insane value, £4 for Virtua Racing.
I got it for $169.
There you go, it's even better. You know, but there's something about these kind of more modern kind of takes. Like, they just kind of miss the mark for me.
I think the problem is with them is that you're putting it on platforms which have, you know, they're 30 years older or 30 years newer, and they've got, you know, 100-fold more processing power. There's just the level of detail, the amount of geometry that you see, and I think you're right when you just said it's almost too clean, too detailed. You know, the thing that the marvelous, the amazing thing about Virtua Fighter and Virtua Racing is they work within the confines and the restrictions of the hardware at the time. And again, I think when we're talking about retro gaming, we're talking about retro games, that's part of the allure for me. That's part of, I'm going on a little bit of a tangent now, but that's why the two versions of Street Fighter 2 always go to the ones on the SNES and the Mega Drive, which are massively cut back from the arcade when you look at them. Astounding ports at the time, but you look at them side by side the arcade now. Smaller sprites, lower resolution, big borders on the screen, less animations, but the stuff that they did with that hardware at the time, amazing. And it's the same for Virtua Fighter as an arcade game, and also for Virtua Fighter as a Sega Saturn port, as a very first opening window Sega Saturn port, which was, as I went into in a blog post that I did last year, you know, very well received at the time. And it's only this hindsight, this this view that it was a disappointment, but it wasn't. It's only looked at now because Remix came after.
Aye, I mean, Edge reviewed the Japanese copy and gave it 9
9
out
out
of
of
10.
10, yeah.
You know, they called it the first true next generation game. So, aye, I mean, what you're talking about Street Fighter 2 as well, that is true. I mean, like, again, going back, obviously then, and like, I had the Amiga at the time, as you know, but I mean, everybody was talking about and wanted Street Fighter 2, and whenever you had a shot of like Street Fighter 2 on the SNES or the Mega Drive, like, as you look, it was the arcade version. Obviously, you look at it now, as you said, you go back and you go, oh, you can really see the limitations. But you know, again, it's working within the confines of that hardware, what it was doing. And then what's even more remarkable is you get to the kind of modern day and you look at what, you know, like Master Linkway and these kind of guys are doing with these fan mods that we've spoken about, where they're bringing across the arcade sound, they're rechanging the colour palettes, they're adding animations, and they're showing that the actual hardware was far more capable. It was basically held back by memory constraints on the kind of cartridge. You know, they couldn't afford to buy bigger cartridges because it would have been more expensive to sell even larger memory. And then obviously they had the development kind of time frames and constraints, and also the budgetary constraints as well. So it's amazing to see that these machines could do more. I always wonder if maybe somebody could go back and rework Virtua Fighter 1 on the Saturn.
Well, some of those fan projects out there are pretty astounding. I mean, that Unreal one just wow.
That's ridiculous, isn't it?
No, no.
The lighting effects in that and the way it moves, the smoothness of it, just goes to show you, you know, what people were working with back then compared to, you know, get the time and to kind of sit there and, you know, pick it apart and get to grips with it fully and see what it could properly do.
Yeah. Passion projects, mate. But speaking of passion projects, I think you could probably class Virtua Fighter Remix as something as a passion project. I mean, there's all sorts of discussions, and again, I touched on this on the blog, but people say that it was a response to Virtua Fighter, but I think Panda said in his Virtua Fighter Remix review, you know, he's spot on. In the time that they had that ready, they must have been working on it immediately after Virtua Fighter launched. And it seemed like it was going to be more of a tech demo than anything else. It was just they could see them, they could, and then decided to release it. It wasn't a response to the Shinden, or at least it doesn't seem that way.
Aye, because there's a talk as well that it was shown behind closed doors at the E3 that the Saturn launched at, so it was in existence as early as, you know, that May 1995. Yeah. So, aye, for me, I think Virtua Fighter Remix always comes across as a kind of beta test.
Yeah.
I think it was them kind of testing the water to see, could they do Virtua Fighter 2? That's just my opinion on it. I think that if you look at it, the texture mapping's there, the clipping's gone, the fighters are far bigger. Like, if you look at Virtua Fighter 1 and put on Remix, the fighters are bigger. There's a definite size difference.
I think it's zoomed in. I think that's what it is.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
right.
I think when you compare them side by side, the animations are absolutely identical, so the hitboxes must be the same. So I think it's just, don't know why it's zoomed in. Yeah.
Right. I guess Panda did that in his video. He timed.
He did.
Like, remember, it's like Sarah's ponytail falling down when she does her flip kicking. He counted the frames and they were identical. So, the kind of myth as well that they've reworked the timings of the moves and they've fixed the frame rate and they've taken out any kind of glitches and everything's been totally refined, and it's like it is literally just a reskin.
It is.
But as I've always said, it feels. The soul just gets ripped out of it, and I think it just feels like a fan mod.
Yeah, I mean, and because it wasn't by the AM2 team, it's by, was it AM3 or AM1 that did it? I can't remember.
I'm sure it was AM1 with assistance from AM2.
Yeah,
that done it,
and I imagine they did it as fans of the game, and you know, it does come across as a remix, of course, not by the original creators. So, yeah, I think you're right in that the soul does feel like it's ripped out of it. It doesn't feel like Virtua Fighter 1 loses the visual identity. And at the same time, it doesn't feel like Virtua Fighter 2, even though the clothing for most of the characters isn't their Virtua Fighter 1 clothes, it's their Virtua Fighter 2 clothes kind of textured on. But the way that they're textured and their colours doesn't look like Virtua Fighter 2. It looks different. So it kind of looks out of place.
It's like a halfway house.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't know what it wants to. Is it VF1? Is it a kind of test for VF2? Where do you want to kind of be? And it's kind of stuck in this kind of weird limbo in between. I mean, the one thing with Remix that was really nice was obviously the kind of packaging that Sega sent out if you registered. I mean, again, because the Saturn that I had at the start was my uncle's one, and he registered for warranties, and see, any time there was a card inside something, whether it was a mini disc player, a VHS player, you know, a turntable, a computer, a Walkman, if there was one of those wee square pamphlets you had to fill in to register, they were off, right? So obviously he's registered that Saturn straight away, and then it was a surprise. Never this Jiffy bag turned up when Virtua Fighter Remix was in there, but it came as people who have got it, you know, maybe have picked it up or still have it. It came in this lovely, big, thick kind of cardboard box with this flip open kind of this big flap cover, and then inside it was a kind of double jewel case, and that there was a kind of the way the case was formed was that it was just a nice hole big enough for that to sit in. There was artwork around it, and then obviously you got the kind of CG portrait disc as part of that bundle. I can't recall what the retail packaging for Remix out if it was just a standard Saturn case. I've never seen Remix out with of that freebie. I never ever seen Remix in Comet and Dixon's in any indie shops. I never ever seen Remix anywhere. So did it ever come out in the standard kind of slim PAL
I think it
box?
did. I think I've just realised I've never seen it in the flesh. I've seen it on eBay in the usual, you know, DVD style case. It still goes for a fair bit, but then the big pack that you're talking about that your uncle had, the jewel case with the outer box and everything, goes for a ton. I've got the Japanese versions that go for about £3 on eBay. That's how I've got it. It's the same game. It's the same game. It's the same game, and it's the same game as Virtua Fighter 1. And I know we've been kind of saying how we're not fans of the visual style. I think anyone that's watching this that hasn't played Virtua Fighter or Virtua Fighter Remix, they're both identical. If you want that classic look that Virtua Fighter started with, go with the original. If you don't like flat shaded polygons for some reason and you want a fully texture map, then Virtua Fighter Remix is your game. They both play absolutely identical, despite Sega claiming to have improved gameplay.
No, you haven't.
It's the same.
It's just a reskin.
Yeah, it's ironic, isn't it? You know, 1995, Sega are reskinning the Virtua Fighter game with texture maps. You go to Virtua Fighter Ultimate Showdown, you can buy flat shaded skins for the Virtua Fighter characters in Virtua Fighter 5.
Madness, honestly. Just goes to show everyone just wants to go back the way.
Exactly.
You know, let's move away from 2D. Let's move away from flat shaded. Let's move away from cell shading. Let's go back to cell shading. Let's go back to
Let's go back to wireframe.
Aye. Let's go back to Pong.
So yeah, Virtua Fighter Remix, not a response to Toshinden. Toshinden, speaking of which, came over to the Sega Saturn just a few months later in November. What did you think of Toshinden S or Toshinden Remix?
Again, I remember my uncle renting this, and for some reason, I'm sure he rented this from Blockbuster, and it was this and Worldwide Soccer, the first one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The
Victory Goal.
Jesus. Victory Goal, jeez, right there. International Victory Goal and Toshinden. I'm sitting here, I can visualise because they came in these wee crappy, you know, horrible wee plastic CD cases with the big stupid Blockbuster blue and white logo wrapped around it because they didn't dare to give you the actual case away because it probably got destroyed given it was cardboard. But it felt really clunky. always felt that with Toshinden on the Saturn, I was always really battling the controls. Same with was it FIFA 96 that I had as well. I always remember there's this memory of the controller creaking because I was fighting it that hard to do something, and that was the same with Toshinden. And again, it's got some nice kind of wee visual effects, and you can see also the PlayStation version was very kind of stylized, and we talked about that kind of smooth kind of look. The bodies of the fighters, the limbs, the kind of the nice kind of transparencies.
Yes.
There's a guy that's got a sword and he does that, and flames go across the ground and all that kind of stuff. But it never kind of resonated with me to Shinden at all. And I think the Saturn version, from memory, I've not played it in a long time. I've got it on Fenrir, I haven't touched it, but I always remember that the controls felt really sluggish.
Yeah, they are. I think I originally played Toshinden in a Sony shop. They had a demo pod. They had a PlayStation up there, big.
Mind them. Yeah. It's the Sony shop, Christ. Used to be one in Glasgow. You've just triggered a. I mean, Tom said that when we spoke to him. It's like you've just triggered a memory right in the back. I can literally see that Sony shop. My God, that was a blast from the past.
Yeah, this is before I had a Saturn of my own. So we used to go to Watford, and I was I can't remember how old I was. It must have been 14. Trying to remember, maybe 13. My mum just let me roam around on my own. I'd just go to all the game shops, and I went into and I saw they went into the Sony shop because they had a PlayStation demo, obviously trying to sell it. And the first game I played in there was Destruction Derby. And then when I went in there another time, they had Toshinden, and I was like, "Well, this is pretty cool." And then I played Toshinden 3 or something at a friend's house much later, and I was like, "This is absolute garbage." But anyway, I bought the Toshinden S on the Saturn a few years back, thinking, I did like the original Toshinden. Got a little bit of, it was a big game, wasn't it? And I played it. I was like, "Oh, this is poor. It is clunky, sluggish." I don't think it's too different from the PlayStation version. Yes, lower resolution, you lose your transparencies, etc. But most of the effects and gameplay are there. Some people say that the Saturn version is better. I'm not sure if it is or not, but it still feels clunky. I mean, it was celebrated for the diving out the way. It's like the first truly 3D texture map fighter, and it's like no, it's not as elegant as like Soul Calibur or Virtua Fighter 3. It's like it's diving over.
It's janky. It's really janky. No, it never ever resonated with me at all. I say it was. I mean, I played Victory Goal more that weekend, than I did that. So I just, again, you had Virtua Fighter sitting there, and then you've came to that, and it just lacked that kind of finesse.
Yeah.
Just it didn't have that polish, just it felt again the word you use, clunky. It really did.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'll do it a massive disservice. It's not this bad, but all the flash, all the flash and the visuals and the hype around it, not too dissimilar from a certain Rise of the Robots in a way. So obviously it wasn't that bad. But
did it come in 14 discs? 14 discs, mate. I get that in Pirate. I told you what they should go to that market, right? see my uncle's face next time I wanted Rise. The bat. Oh, he's getting educated now. That's that. You're almost an honorary Ouija. You know what I mean? But mate, they put up to the list, and it was like mine. I told you it was £2 for your first disc and £1 for every additional disc. So my uncles used to get up and buying like one and 2 disc games, maybe pushing it to a 3. The woman came out. I was like, "Can I get Rise of the Robots up in the chart? Number 43. She's in the briefcase. Flicks through. Comes out with a wad of discs with like the biggest elastic band round it you've ever seen in your life. I'll be £15, please, like that. For a pirate game. £15 for a pirate game.
Buy the retail one.
Aye. It was about 30 quid or something. I didn't get doing well, mate. But aye.
It's better than Rise of the Robots. It's better than Rise of the Robots.
It's a lot better than that. Jesus, that's such a bad game.
But yeah,
it's like just walk out the hangar. Please insert disc 7. Cutscene of a ape-shaped robot coming out the hangar. Please insert disc 13. It's like, come on, why fight something?
No, you don't. Not in that game. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of hype and, you know, graphical features, but it didn't have the gameplay of Virtua Fighter. So yeah, you're better off with the Saturn original there. But of course, that all changed in December '95, as the second out of the big three to arrive was Virtua Fighter 2. And obviously, we've spoken at length about what an absolute revelation this game was.
Aye, it's one of the games again. Like, we remember seeing it on, let's say, SEGA Saturn magazine gave away the VHS, and we've spoke about it. You know, that it showed you kind of Pie and Loud, and they're on Jeffrey's stage and they're just going through their motions, their punches, their kicks, and she's doing all their kind of flips and all that, and Loud's doing his spin kick and stuff, and it's all showing off. And then you get to like some kind of one-on-one actual combat, but the hitboxes aren't there apart from the throws. So like, Jeffrey and Wolf are picking people up and throwing them about, and I just remember seeing that and going, what the hell is this? It's like, no, that must be the arcade version that they're showing. It can't, this can't be the Saturn, and obviously it was Saturn footage. And to see that back then was just mind-blowing. To actually play that, you've spoken as well about how whenever you got VF2 in your bundle and you took it, it was a SCART on the TV downstairs, and putting RGB SCART in and seeing that running, and it just gets kind of back to that thing Sega Lord X said, if you're picking it up today and you look at it and try and look at it through 1995 eyes, try and look at it as to what was out at that time when that came out, because as he said, like, to know the absolute jubilation of seeing that running. We got that, was it December 95 in Japan, it came out January over here in 96, and to see that at that time was just mind-blowing. I mean, it took until Tekken 3 for PlayStation to even come up with anything beat 'em up wise that could even lay a finger on VF2. Like Tekken 2, which was a good fighting game, I had plenty of fun with. I love Tekken 2.
I love Tekken 2 more than 3.
Aye, I mean, the Yoshimitsu model on 2, I think is just, that was my kind of go-to was Yoshimitsu on Tekken 2, and his wee victory pose, his wee hat, and his wee green trousers, but and he's up in the air and slashing down. I jump pogo stick. Better not do that on camera. Could be a dodgy moment there, but aye. So I mean, I had plenty of fun with Tekken 2, and it's a very good port on the PlayStation. But again, you put VF2 beside that, and it was just like, what?
Yeah,
it was night and day.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, gameplay wise, they're just mild. As I say, love Tekken 2. Lots of fun with that one. It's my favourite Tekken. But I still remember my friend got a PlayStation for Christmas, and she's like, "Oh, this is Tekken." And I was thinking, this isn't as good as what I'm playing, because we were looking at the backgrounds. I mean, in Virtua Fighter 2, you've got the lovely parallax. It's obviously not fully 3D like the arcades. You've got the lovely parallax that makes it look 3D. Like the arenas are like fully realised, like the rings, With Tekken 2, one thing I remember is we figured out how to run. When you just mess about in games and you're a teenager with your mates, and one ran backwards and the other one was chasing it. The camera panned out. And all we saw was the clipping, because obviously the floors were made up of polygons. It's not flat, and you can just see that the background is just one flat image, and the floor is just a bunch of polygons, and there's clipping there. And people were really quick to point out when Virtua Fighter 1 was clipping with some of the ring, but crickets when it came to Tekken 2. But anyway.
Aye, no, I remember that the whole, if you backed away from each other playing a two-player game, like the camera just went further and further out, and then it lost that kind of that illusion, that grandiose about it. It didn't quite, it lacked the polish. Whenever you it was like pulling the curtain back a bit, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, even when you're like moving around, if you're rolling towards the camera or rolling away, and the arena had to rotate a bit, you could see the clipping, and so it just didn't feel as polished. It didn't look as clean. It wasn't as high a resolution as possible. Obviously, the characters had noticeable polygonal edges to them, not like Virtua Fighter 2, which was really smooth looking. I mean, even Remix looked quite smooth compared to Tekken. I mean, it obviously had the effects and everything and all the hit sparks and stuff, but yeah, Virtua Fighter 2 was just a revelation. It's nice to hear Maximilian Dood talk about it so glowingly in recent videos. He had it as the second most important fighting game of all time, just behind Street Fighter 2, of course. And I think
he mentions as well about the fact of, again, taking into context the time it came out.
Yeah.
You know, this is a 1994 game. He's talking about the arcade version, but I mean, obviously 95 in Japan and in America for the Saturn, and obviously 96 here. But you forget how early that came out. Like I think Daytona USA, we're talking about Virtua Racing coming out in 92. Like Daytona was previewed in arcades in 93 and then got rolled out in 94. Model 2 Daytona was 93. It was available. It was out there in 93.
It's out there.
It's out. Aye, oh, there we go. So, aye, but it is good to see Max kind of, you know, somebody is kind of respected as that, and the kind of the beat 'em up kind of content creation kind of community. Someone is kind of respected as that, to give VF2 its place is nice to see.
Yeah, I think he says if this game came out on PlayStation, it would have sold millions and it would be legendary. And yeah, it probably would have, because I don't think there was anything that could really hold a candle to it.
Yu Suzuki's sitting there going like that, grudgingly.
I mean, I don't think Yu Suzuki wanted to make... Was he one of the ones that didn't want to make games for any other platform? I know there was a bunch of developers that rebelled when the trend was closed.
I know Yuji Naka didn't want to make anything for anything but Sega hardware. I'm not quite sure about Yu Suzuki. If he didn't, then he quickly came round when Shenmue 3 got its backing.
Shenmue 2 was out on Xbox in no time.
Aye, exactly. Aye. I think a certain Mr. Moore had something to do with that.
He did indeed. But yeah, I mean, we've obviously talked about Virtua Fighter 2 a lot, and Virtua Fighter 1, and obviously there's the old podcast episodes for our listeners to check out if you want to hear a bit more about them. After Virtua Fighter 2, we've got Criticon, which is a very oddball one, which we'll touch on in our Oddballs episode. But Virtua Fighter Kids came next, which is basically Virtua Fighter 2 again.
Aye, and it's a weird one, this, isn't it, Virtua Fighter Kids? Like the big giant head style and the kind of visual style of the characters, the way their faces are drawn. Like it's just a strange one. I always wonder how Akira does a double kick, but his feet don't go past where his chin is, so how can he make contact with anybody? It's like, how's that work?
Yeah.
It's like, mate, you're not kicking anybody. Your legs are too short. It's like... It's not one that I go to very often, to be fair. I sometimes put it on for the shits and giggles, basically, but it's not one that I'm not drawn to that. If I put the Saturn on, I don't go, you shot of VF Kids.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I do put it on. I enjoy having it, and I enjoy playing it just for a laugh. It's not one to take seriously. I mean, I always spot something different in there that makes me laugh, that makes me giggle, like in the backgrounds. Like I think it was the statue in the back of Akira's stage has got some sort of stupid expression on its face. It was making me giggle laugh the last time I played through it. It's a laugh, basically, but it's a silly game. You can choose. I forgot, because someone reminded me to watch a video to remind me that when I last played it, you can get to choose the physics model. You can have kids mode or Virtua Fighter mode. Yeah, so the physics is a lot more like Virtua Fighter 2 in Virtua Fighter 2 mode, but it's still not quite right, just because the models of them are just, so ill proportioned. So it goes for it's the most expensive, aside from Remix, it's the most expensive one to pick up. It goes, obviously it didn't sell massively well.
I can't imagine I get a big production run either.
No. I think again, I think it was just the team messing around with the Virtua Fighter 2 port and deforming their heads. It's all right. Stick it in the arcades and stick it on a Saturn disc.
It's an STV game, isn't it?
It is, yeah. STV.
It's the kind of wee facial expressions of whenever you kick them, they get like wee crosses for eyes and stuff like that. It's
little
like
tears and stuff.
it's oddball, honestly.
It's funny enough, it's the only Virtua Fighter game that was reviewed in Sonic the Comic. It's really odd. Yeah. So they got a really weird relationship with Saturn. Like they loved the Mega CD and they loved the 32X. And then the Saturn came out and they barely covered it at all. And then they started reviewing really odd games like Road Rash, like 3DO ports basically. But then midway through 96, they review Virtua Fighter Kids, give it 96% and say it's one of the greatest fighting games ever. I'm like,
that's got to be a piss take, surely.
It's odd. I think it's just Sega were just really odd about the review codes they were sending out.
Bloody hell. 96%. That's generous.
I know. It's visually it's an alright looking game. I mean, it looks good. It looks fine. It's just the gameplay. It's just, I think stuff like Pocket Fighter is doing it right.
Aye, that took it and totally reworked it in the right way. It made it completely comic book, added loads of Easter eggs in there, kind of poked fun at itself. Not saying that VF Kids doesn't poke fun at itself, it does, but aye, it's a weird game. VF Kids, Pocket Fighter's brilliant.
Pocket Fighter's gorgeous, absolutely outstanding. I love that game. It's just like the when you're on that background stage and you've got your Zangief and you do that combo where you turn into a bear, then you turn into like a Russian dancer, then you blow vodka at them, and and Bison's on the background on his snowplow.
It's like one of Ken's specials as he goes up on a horse as a
he jumps out, he turns into a cowboy, boots.
The horse kicks you or something. It's like, what?
Yeah, Sega should have gone like fully all in on Virtua Fighter Kids like that. That would have been a laugh.
Aye, I mean they dabbled in doing like a 2D Virtua Fighter 2 with the Mega Drive games. So you imagine if they kind of taken the Pocket Fighter style concept and kind of also the Virtua Fighter anime sort of thing as well. They could have maybe played about it a bit more. Yeah. A 2D kind of more stylized Virtua Fighter Kids might have worked, but well. It's fun for kind of 5-10 minutes to have a laugh at it, but I don't be kind of sitting there with a moveset trying to learn combos.
No, it's not a game for the pros. You're not going to see it. You're not going to see it at Evo.
No, imagine that. What?
Right. Do you know what? That's the last mainline Virtua Fighter game on the Saturn. There was no more after that. There was a crossover which we'll get onto, and this is where this is vintage Sega here. So Virtua Fighter Kids comes out July 1996. August 1996, we get Fighting Vipers. A month apart.
Aye, Fighting Vipers is brilliant, honestly. What again? I think it's one of these kind of. I think it gets the kind of the respect it deserves. I think Fighting Vipers. I think it's like you've got to remember as well. Like Fighting Vipers on the Saturn was one of the earliest home arcade port beat 'em ups to ever have anything 3D background related.
Yeah.
Now the full backgrounds are obviously 2D. VDP2 is drawing the kind of the ground. You've got the parallax and whatnot for the kind of backgrounds, like the saloons and the kind of the airports and all that kind of stuff. But the ring is 3D. It's polygons because you shatter it, and I can't think of any fighting game that came to the home that had anything 3D background related before that.
I don't think so. When did Bloody Raw come out?
Oh, jeez.
That's the only one. You don't like Bloody Raw?
No, mate. See games where it's anything to do with kind of like animal stuff, like fighting, like Primal Rage as well, man. That's a lot of mince.
Primal Rage isn't great.
I got that in the Game Gear. I mean, again, I get that as a gift, a surprise Game Gear game gift. And the box with that black box with the big blue kind of the monkey in the front, kind of baring its teeth. And, oh, the logo looked great, and you look in the back. Oh, this just looks great, and then it's like, oh my god, this is awful.
Primal Rage is not good. I've got the Saturn version, which is meant to be the best version, and it's I've still not beaten it because it's a proper midway style game. I know it was Atari that published it, but it was it's one of those grossly unfair, cheap arcade games, and it's clunky as hell to play. But I thought Bloody Raw was kind of fun. I think that had background, but I think you're right. I don't think that was before Fighting Vipers, and especially no fighting game had destructible 3D environments.
Aye, and again, it's a clever gameplay mechanic as well. That the move set, it's not as diverse and deep as like a Virtua Fighter. It's more. I think you can button bash a lot more through like Fighting Vipers, but the cast in it as well. It doesn't take itself too seriously. You've got like. Just also we've got Ban, who's I think he's the kind of the closest to a Virtua Fighter style cat. I think Ban's the only guy I think you could take. I think
maybe Tokyo.
I was thinking Tokyo might be the only other one you could take and put into Virtua Fighter. Him and Ban. I think the rest, like Raxel and stuff, he just wouldn't go in. Candy wouldn't.
Sandman. He's basically like Rufus from Street Fighter 4, like 10 years before the fact.
You're in Hyundai. Oh, you're 10 years too early. Literally. But it's the kind of. There's kind of comedy moves in Fighting Vipers all like Sandman, as we said, he picks you up and bowls you like a ball.
And you get the pin sound effect as well.
Aye, you hit the edge of the ring and you hear pins drop like a bowling alley. It's just kind of crazy. But aye, the cages as well, they're not just there for destruction kind of reasons as well. Like, you can use them in the fight. Like, again, there's throw moves, but also if you press the throw button towards your opponent, you actually can grab them and then you fling them behind you. So if you're close enough, if you're too far away from one end of the ring, the guy or the character you throw loses momentum, so they kind of slow down. But if you're close enough and you fire them round behind you, they hit the ring and they fly up.
Yeah.
So you can actually juggle them off the fence. So, for something like Ban, for example, if you grab the opponent with him, throw them off the fence, you can kind of kick them back up in the air, and then he's got a shoulder dash similar to Akira's. So if you hit them off the fence, you lose energy. You kick them back up in the air, then you lose energy, and then you can do that shoulder dash if they've got enough kind of health already taken off them and armour, and you'll see the wee indicators up beside the energy bars, and they start to flash like the quadrants of what has been weakened. You can actually end up just completely annihilating somebody by flinging them off a fence. It's like it's really, really clever. It manages to be so different to Virtua Fighter that it warrants and deserves its place beside it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I did get into a discussion with our friend Scott on Twitter when he was saying that he prefers but he said Fighting Vipers was better. I said it's not better,
right.
but it is a fantastic game. It is a fantastic game. Just the ability to juggle and stuff, as you say, there's a lot more juggle physics in there. There's a lot of there's it's not as deep as Virtua Fighter in terms of on the ground gameplay, but there's depth in the mechanics and the armor breaking and the how you use the environment. So it's a fantastic game, and again, it doesn't really get its due these days. It's definitely unfairly forgotten and overlooked. And I think it was at the time as well.
I mean, I know it's obviously been brought out on Xbox 360, on Xbox Live Arcade, and it's backwards compatible on Xbox One. As we speak, it might get delisted at any moment, and it's also on the series consoles. But I think the Saturn port as well gets kind of unfair criticism because Sega made the decision that they were going to lower the resolution and not use the high resolution mode because they wanted to bring over the lighting effects, which are gorgeous. Like some of the on Sandman stage, like that kind of sunset that you get, the glow as it's kind of the sun's going down. obviously in Tokyo stage, which is the airport, we'll get to Fighters Megamix later on because they reintroduced part of that. But in the arcade there's a plane that takes off before the fight that was removed. It was kind of cut back, but all the stages like Candy stage is set at night as well, in a kind of parking area with graffiti on the walls. Grace's stage looks as if it's kind of set in a kind of industrial kind of background set again at night, kind of different light sources and stuff. Is it Jane? The kind of again, she's in a kind of, it looks like an abandoned kind of top floor of like an office building or something, because the windows are all broken out, but you can see the city out the background and stuff, and it's excuse me, it's really, really stylized, and again it captures that kind of more, I wouldn't say cyberpunk, it's not that kind of, but it's that kind of more edgier, kind of more like a kind of illegal street fighting sort of kind of feel to it.
I think cyberpunk is kind of the era. It's kind of like a near future Akira style, street gangs and stuff. Not too far away from Last Bronx, which will come later, but
but it's a game that we've not really spoken about much on here as Fighting Vipers, which you can tell because we're kind of getting right into it. And also there'll be gameplay footage which will be accompanying this as we're speaking. But I think, as I said, the Saturn version does get kind of, I think, unfairly looked at, because you had Virtua Fighter 2, which had that kind of whole high resolution mode, 60 FPS, but it doesn't do anything 3D destructible wise in its backgrounds, and the lighting is pretty much just a standard. There's no different light sources or anything across the stages in VF2. No. I think that the most kind of taxing that VF2 does for its stages is probably Dural stage.
Yeah.
Where you're kind of underwater, so you've got that kind of filter on front where you're slowed right down and it's kind of all shimmering and stuff like that. But apart from that, it's pretty much of a muchness across each stage. But Fighting Vipers is great fun.
It's fantastic.
And it's still it's pretty dirt cheap as well, still to pick up.
Japanese version goes for buttons, and people should be getting the Japanese version because of Pepsi Man.
Pepsi Man.
Yeah, he's fantastic. I mean, obviously he didn't make it over to the Western releases because of licensing, but it's one of the best things. I'm always having to clean up my memory space on the Saturn. So whenever I play Fighting Vipers, one of the first things I do is unlock him. And I don't even unlock him to play as him. It's just so that you start the first fight and you lose the first round. You just stand there and just get the shit kicked out of you. Lose round one, and then let round two. Once you're like down to a sliver of life, here comes a new challenger, and Pepsi Man comes in for the save, and it goes Pepsi Man, and it pops up. It's absolutely sensational.
And the announcers are great as well. It's like, cause we were talking before we started recording. It's like the kind of the female announcer for Fighting Vipers. She's so calm. Round one, let the action begin. Go! Then your mama's crap! Bowling balls. It's like fences getting rattled and stuff.
Smashing
it's like,
armour off.
Aye. It betrays the kind of chaos it's about to follow, doesn't it? In a way, it's like...
It does, mate. Oh, yeah. It's a fantastic game. Absolutely fantastic game. Really does deserve more respect than what it gets. And I think I'm guilty of letting it come under Virtua Fighter's huge shadow to a certain extent, because it really is a fantastic game.
Yep. And again, if you do want to play an arcade perfect version, I would suggest getting on that Xbox and picking it up, because I don't think it's expensive. It's only £5 or £6.
I'm sure it's regularly on sale for a few quid.
Aye. Definitely add it to your library, because with Daytona disappearing, Jet Set Radio disappearing, there's no saying which ones could go next. So,
yeah,
highly recommend it.
If you want a arcade perfect port, go for the Xbox version. If you want Pepsi Man, then you got to get the Japanese Saturn version. I'm a Japanese Saturn guy. You've got to have Pepsi Man.
Pepsi Man!
With that, mate, I think that brings us close to the end of 96, but I think we'll take a break here. And though we didn't discuss the musical choice before, I thought we'd give our listeners and viewers a bit of Ride the Tiger. What do you reckon?
Oh, from Virtua Fighter 2, Akira's theme.
Yeah.
Oh, what a tune. Round 1, fight!
Round 2. Here we go. You're listening to the Sega Guys. I'm Dan the Mega Driver. He's James the Segaholic. You were just listening to Ride the Tiger from Virtua Fighter 2, and we are talking about the Saturn's 3D fighting game history. Fighting Vipers was the last one, mate. Part 2 isn't really starting with a bang, more of a sizzle. Next game I got on the list in September 1996, Toshinden Ura, aka Toshinden 2, aka Toshinden Ultra Revenge Attack.
Aye, it's quite a mouthful, that, isn't it, really? We'll just stick to Ura. Again, this isn't one that I actually played back in the day. It wasn't until I got my Fenrir that I actually tried this out, and it's an improvement on the first game, but that's not too difficult. I would say it's like marginal, but it's no great.
I actually think it's absolute crap. I think it's dog shit. I think it's worse than the first one. I think it's clunkier, it's jankier. The frame rates are all over the place with that one. It feels like that they will go because Sega helped in developing Toshinden S or Toshinden Remix, didn't they? But I think someone else published Toshinden Ura.
Aye, they've kind of stepped away from it. So I feel like I played it. I thought that's all right, But I mean, it was, as I say, all right. I mean, as I said, the bar wasn't very high to begin with. If we're talking about kind of margins, it's like playing Athlete Kings and doing the high jump, but putting the bar all the way down. If we're using analogies. I win.
This is too easy for me.
Oh man, that's Carol. I was about Carovania.
Jump in the high jump. That's like 1.20 meters.
Oh, nice. So as I say, that's the bar, mate. It is all the way done.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's poor. I think the reviews at the time were pretty poor, and I got it again. I got it and remixed it about the same time, and it's because I think a lot of people our age, even if it's not fondness, you have a memory, and they're kind of games that I quite like. I quite enjoy having them and going back to them, even if they're not great. I think it's a poor game, but again, it's still one that I've got memories attached to. So it's hard to think of anyone that bought it but for 40 quid and enjoyed it back in the day. When all the games that we just rattled through in part 1, your Virtua Fighters, your Fighting Vipers, and then you've got those out there, and then you pick up Toshinden. It's a kind of a remix of Toshinden 2 from the PlayStation, but much more different than what Toshinden S is to Toshinden 1. So it's a very odd game, and yeah, it's just as clunky as the first one. You say it's less clunky, I say it's more clunky. But it's definitely clunky.
Aye, there's an element of clunkiness. There's a clunky gauge. That's it. Aye, you can't imagine somebody running to the shop and paying 40 odd quid for that. Or maybe some poor bugger going as a Christmas present or something off a granny. You know, there you go, son. You enjoy that.
You don't actually see many copies. I've never sought out copies for the PAL version, so I don't know how much they cost.
I bet it goes for like 150 quid or something stupid.
I bet it goes for at least 50. we'll have a look in a sec.
Anybody pays that for it to sit on a shelf, they need help. Honestly, no.
Yeah. And then there was a few more after that. So there's Fist, again, a Genki 3D fighter, which I think we'll discuss more in the follow-up episode to this because it's another obscure one. But then, that 1996 comes to a close, but not before ushering in perhaps the greatest 3D fighter of that generation. Virtua Fighter 2 is definitely one in for a shout, but Fighters Megamix definitely gives it a run for its money.
Aye, in terms of content, I don't think many can touch Fighters Megamix. It's a great premise. It's the kind of Smash Brothers before Smash Brothers kind of thing. Taking the concept of crossing franchises. Why Sega haven't gone back to this in the modern day? Bring in VF, bring in Fighting Vipers, bring in Last Bronx, bring in Shenmue, bring in Yakuza, but just you think bring in Sonic the Fighters. There's so much that they've got that they could do Fighters Megamix 2 and it would be absolutely insane. In fact, that's a good episode idea.
Yeah, I've got that on the list already, actually.
I wouldn't be surprised. You could, the Dreamcast. I didn't even mean that. For Fighters Megamix 2 if they ever done it. But aye, then you add in the kind of hidden characters, the Daytona car, Janet from Virtua Cop 2. Again, Pepsi Man makes that appearance as well. So, it's great as well in that for the Virtua Fighter side, they didn't just bring over the VF2 stuff. The Fighting Vipers guys are pretty much untouched. They stay exactly as they are, but they didn't just bring over VF2's guys. They actually brought over the VF3 movesets. They brought over the dodge button. So you did get a kind of an upgrade on the VF side of things as well. And then obviously you've got your different paths. You can fight just Virtua Fighters. You can fight just Fighting Vipers. It was spoke before as well. If you do the Virtua Fighters, then it's more zoomed in, so the characters look bigger. But if you do the Fighting Vipers and it's got the cage, it just kind of scales it back, so the fighters look a bit smaller. But there's just so much going on in Megamix. So much.
It's almost perfect because you've got the training mode as well. So for every single character in that game, you can go through and it tells you the moves and you can practice them. You get the okay when you do the move properly. There's I don't think any other game had at that point, didn't have a training mode. It's years ahead of its time, that one. The unlockables were fantastic. Obviously, that kind of was a response to Tekken and the like, because they always had their unlockable characters. And I think Sega games at that point had been criticised for basically just being straight arcade ports, which you and I were happy with, but
the masses will.
Yeah. So, and they were fantastic unlockables as well, having the Sonic the Fighters characters, Bean and Bark, Janet, as you said, the Daytona car, as you said, the Virtua Fighter Kids versions, they're I think they're more fun to play as here than they are in the actual Virtua Fighter Kids game.
Aye, because they're novelties,
yeah.
And then there's a lot of other novelty characters that are surrounding them, so it's kind of they're more grounded in that game, I think. But it's just so much going on. You're probably right. It was, I think, more of a response to the more kind of mainstream home market focused beat 'em ups.
Yeah.
Well, they were taking influence from their arcade game, but you look at like Tekken 3, that brought in like the bowling mode, stuff like, just adding wee silly kind of side games that you wouldn't find in the arcade version. So obviously Sega are trying to kind of do that kind of more kind of home focused, kind of more I don't know, kind of jokey, less serious, bringing in like the Daytona car, a bloody car up on its wheels, punching you with its tyres, stuff, just madness. But aye, it definitely was, I think, a reaction to what they were seeing being done with the arcade ports. Because you're right, like you look at stuff like Manx TT that was heavily criticised because it literally just is. There's a Saturn mode which has extra bikes, but again, there's only 2 tracks.
Yeah.
And then you get the tracks reversed as well. So, aye, wealth of content and Megamix, insane.
Just give us a sequel. Just got the framework for Virtua Fighter 5 Final Show. Just add some nonsense in there. Cross it over with like the finishes in Yakuza or Like a Dragon. Those games.
Could you imagine that? Pick your fighting style. Have Kiryu facing off against Landy. Could you imagine that?
Yeah. And they have these bonkers finishes where I don't know, like where Kiryu picks up a bike and starts wailing on them or something, crashes them through the wall or something. People love that. Like I was playing. My kids have been obsessed with Smash Brothers on the Switch. Like my two eldest, both on their separate profiles, unlocked every single character on it. Because those characters have got the appeal, but Sega have got loads of characters with appeal as well. It doesn't have to be Virtua Fighter versus Fighting Vipers. Just throw the kitchen sink at it. Have Sonic fighting Kiryu. Have Ryo Hazuki fighting I don't know, Gilius Thunderhead from Golden Axe.
I mean, you could have like the different versions of Sonic. You could have classic Sonic. You could have Sonic Adventure Sonic. You could have Sonic Frontier Sonic. You could, there's so much history in terms of characters. Like you could have like Beaten Gum from Jet Set Radio. You could just have so much. You could have Ooh La La for Space Channel 5.
Fighting G from House of the Dead or something.
Aye, that would literally be that guy's. That would be like the intro. We're meeting G over there. Round 1. Fight. Just for complete cheese value, you could just add the voice acting in. It's annoying that I think that Sega fans come up quite easily with great ideas, and Sega sitting there going, "Is that, mate?" It's like, nah.
Fighters Megamix 2, we hear you loud and clear. Here's Cosmic Smash.
Here's Super Monkey Ball. Cosmic Smash, the game that nobody knew about or cared about or bought, came out like literally the most. It's like the Dreamcast version of Michael Jackson's new album. No, I mean, it came out like it's beyond the autopsy. Like, cause of death has been confirmed at this point. Here's a game. It's like in Japan only. Beautiful DVD case that it comes in, and it's all kind of see-through and transparent. It looks lovely, but aye, it's not a Dreamcast classic by any stretch.
Yeah, it was fairly meddling in the reviews. Only was in one UK publication, which was Edge, which got 6 out of 10. Every other review is from Japan. I know we had Res came after, and that is a classic because that was universally acclaimed.
Aye. I know, like Cosmic Smash, I think would have had some kind of impact possibly on the kind of visual style and the kind of idea of Res, but I wouldn't imagine it'd be too much because they're very close in their releases.
Yeah.
So I think they would have maybe run side by side with each other. I don't think that Cosmic Smash came out soon enough to have enough of an impact on the ideas for Res. I think Res was already pretty much well into its development by the time Cosmic Smash had hit as well. So,
I'm glad that it's coming out.
I think it's a game that probably works better in VR, to be fair, because again, if you pick it up today, it's the review in Edge, said it all. Whenever they summed it up, I'm trying to see if I've got it here actually. In fact, I do. The review for Ed, the way that they finished it up here, Cosmic Smash is a diversion, a beautiful one, as stylish as anything else on the system, but a diversion nonetheless, and only those who treat it as such will fail to be disappointed.
Yeah, I mean,
And I think
played
that's
it.
fair.
I played it 2002 on my Japanese Dreamcast, and yeah, it's fun. And don't get me wrong, I love the idea that it's getting a modern remake, especially for VR, and it's fantastic they're bringing that back. But back to the original point was, Fighters Mega Mix 2, this wealth of riches that they've got in the IP locker.
Yep.
If I have my top 10 Sega games to bring back or make sequels to, it's probably not there.
No, Cosmic Smash is like a game that will work great in VR, but it's not what you're wanting to see brought back. It's like, as you say, that wealth of a library of characters, that they've built on since the original Fighters Mega Mix. You think, as we say, like the monkey for Samba de Amigo could be a, you just keep rattling them off. Seaman. You imagine Landy roundhouse kicking Seaman across the screen. Sensational. That's what you get for being cheeky, Yeah. Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah, the options are limitless on a Fighters Mega Mix 2. I mean, come on, Sega. But yeah, the original, superb. I was listening to an Arcade Attack podcast today at the time of recording. It's 1996 in gaming. They're talking through the game ranking scores, what are the best rated scores, and Fighters Mega Mix was way down below Soul Edge. I was thinking, what?
Was it?
Yeah.
I'm sure that get 97 in Sega Saturn magazine. I remember the wee sticker with the Saturn logo, and I'm sure 97%.
The highest rated game that year was Mario 64, obviously. The second highest rated game, Wipeout 2097.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great game, but
the best of 96. Yeah.
Sega now.
But yeah, Fighters Mega Mix, absolute classic make. I think they will have to talk through Fighters Mega Mix 2 in detail in a future episode.
Yeah, I think that deserves to get a bit of more in-depth discussion, mate.
It does. So that closed out 96 in Japan. Didn't come over here until 97. That's when I got my copy. I remember it was brand new. In fact, I got ID'd for Fighters Mega Mix.
Is that because you had to buy a knife to open the new plastic cases? See, I never owned Fighters Mega Mix in the day, but Sam got it, and that was the first time I ever seen that newfangled case. And I was like, come on!
I was like Ultra Magnus and Junkie on, like, damn it, open!
Prime, you said Fighters Mega Mix would light our darkest hour. Daniel, hand over the case.
Never!
Terminate him. Oh God! Yeah. Awful cases. Oh. You went from one extreme, cardboard and flimsy to, you need a combination code to the chastity belt of video games cases. Like Robin Hood Men in Tights. Remember that scene?
The keys.
How the hell did you manage to get that in a podcast?
You've always been the one because it's just the right size. It's not the size that counts, it's how you use it.
We're men in tights.
We roam around the forest looking for fights.
Good old Mel Brooks. Eh?
Oh, it's superb, that film. I used to watch it so many times.
Where were we?
Where were we? Right, Fighters Mega Mix, and closes out 96. We had first fighting game in 97. 3D fighting game for the Saturn was Desert. Obscure one, in case the name hasn't given it. The Hurt. If the name hasn't,
That's like a sneeze.
Yeah. The name hasn't given it away. Another obscure one we'll come back to in the follow-up episode to that.
Aye.
But after...
For people wondering what we're talking about, it's spelt D/XHIRD.
Yeah, think of a third, but with an X instead of a T.
Aye. Aye. I think the X is meant to be silent, so it's DHIRD.
I'm not sure, because there's the Guilty Gear entry, isn't there? Which is Guilty Gear Xrd. Which I don't know, mate. I don't know. But we'll put that onto the side because the next one's an absolute banger. Coming out in August 1997. Arguably the best looking fighting game on Saturn is Last Bronx. What a game that is.
Aye. It's, oh man.
What
Aye. Jaggy Love, just what that intro music and that anime, intro that goes with it, it's just unbelievable. Just sets the tone straight away. Visually stunning, high resolution mode, 60 FPS, very advanced VDP 1 and 2 usage, combining to create absolutely stunning. People were that convinced it was full 3D backgrounds. That's how good a job that it did.
The subway
as well as the underground with the ceiling just goes all the way. It's so good, and it doesn't lose any detail. Like my favourite stage, I think, it's actually the Midnight Garden.
Yeah,
because it's got that beautiful kind of the buildings in the background, and as you move about, you can actually see around them, and it's absolutely glorious. And as a game as well, this is probably, it's not as deep as Virtua Fighter, but it's definitely deeper mechanics wise than Fighting Vipers. It's like a lot of kind of my one kind of takeaway for Last Bronx is that it's the most responsive blocking mechanics in any of the fighting games, like, because you rely on it as lightning. Like if you press that A button, like the block goes up straight away, and you need to, because you can't button bash in Last Bronx. No. It's the characters in it, they strategize their attacks. Like there's patterns that they'll use. Like you can't cheaply grab something. Like in Fighting Vipers, like the reach is quite far. Like you can really, you don't need to be in a specific place. You can be quite lax with your positioning. But with Last Bronx, like the amount of times that you try and kind of double tap to dash in and grab, but you'll kind of fall short and you'll just get scudded up in the air. It's really, really clever. It's really deep.
It's definitely one that's very, very keen on like the punish sort of game. You get punished, and that's the whole. Very much, because your life bars, I think they're even shorter than Virtua Fighter 2, because you can get absolutely larped in it. Because if you mess around, you find out you get if you get your timing wrong, you will get punished and you get absolutely battered. And it's a much more strategic game in that sense than Virtua Fighter 2, because you can still recover.
That's the word, mate. Strategic. That's pretty much spot on. You're right. The energy bars are a lot shorter. As you said, what if you mistime something? You are getting scudded. So strategic's the right word.
Yeah, what's the guy with the big hammer?
Oh, aye.
Can't remember his name.
Aye. I mean, my go-to is Kurosawa.
Kurosawa for me as well.
Zagros Kungris. Don't know what you say. That's what it sounds like.
Oh, he's fantastic with his wooden sword.
Aye, wooden sword and his purple suit. His bandana, his long hair.
Superb. Yeah, that's who I normally go to. But yeah, I've gone in a few times and tried to run in and go, and he, like, the big guy just blocks you with his hammer. Just like, oh, okay.
I mean, there's obviously kind of like in the stages as well, some of them have got like little kind of fences at the end, so you can actually use them again. Like you can backflip, like somersault onto the fences and then off them to launch attacks as well. quite kind of similar way to the kind of fence in fighting vipers, but obviously it's not destructible. But as I say, like Kurosawa's got this kind of throw where like he'll kind of knee in the stomach and then double you over, and it's like the back of the nut where this wood. It's like it's brutal, and like
the sound effects are fantastic in that game as well.
He's also got one like obviously it's a wooden sword, but if you push down diagonal towards and hit punch, see if he goes up there, and then if you time it right for him coming down, you press towards and punch, and he takes the butt of it, and he goes it's like Jesus Christ.
It's brilliantly. It's all motion captured as well. It was the first motion captured weapons based game. So
there you go.
It's it's phenomenal. It's the way that the arenas are shaped is much more realistic than fighting vipers. You don't have the accentuated bounces off the throw someone into the fence and then they fly up about 5 feet into the air.
There's no kind of juggle mechanics, no cheap juggle mechanics anyway. There's an element of juggling in Last Bronx, but not to the kind of cheesy levels of fighting vipers.
No.
Brilliant game.
Brilliant game. The next one's not bad either. Coming out in October '97. Just a little game, Dead or Alive. What would ever come of that series?
No, the game that saved Tecmo as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's obviously based on the Model 2 hardware, and Tecmo were struggling at that time and tapped into the kind of the burgeoning beat 'em up market at that time, and Dead or Alive's a result. And again, this is one of the games that Richard Ledbetter kind of quite frequently championed as a reason to chip your Saturn and get this on import. And again, it's painful this didn't come out over here.
It really is.
There's no reason for it not to have come out. But again, you're looking at it, October '97. Bernie's probably came in at this point and decided. I wouldn't be surprised if there would have been plans to bring this over, but it's probably just been shelved. But if you play the Japanese version, there's literally next to zero.
I can't remember any kanji or any Japanese in there.
The menus are all in English. Obviously the fighters kind of have their, like Virtua Fighter, they have their taunts and their victory kind of poses and whatnot in Japanese, which is fine. Like Shundi washing his carpets as we, But, I again, absolutely gorgeous. Brings a whole new dynamic in terms of the danger zones, which again, you had ring outs, but, Tecmo took it to another extreme, whereas it's not just a ring out, it's an explosive ring out.
Yeah. When you get one of them in the danger zone and you get that little when they fly up into the air. It's fantastic, and you can still juggle them as well.
That's right.
It's brilliant. It's kind of a halfway house between Virtua Fighter and Fighting Vipers in that sense.
Aye. It's not got the kind of level of depth of a Virtua Fighter 2, but it's got that kind of more kind of more accessible kind of juggle mechanics. Can, if you smack somebody yourself, it's that big. You get the big fireball that comes up and then go way up in the air. And, if you roundhouse kick them on the way back down, you can smack them back onto it. So you get double explosions, and it's carnage. But it's great fun, and it spawned obviously a massively successful series.
Yeah, and as great as the series is, the first three, I think it will do it for me.
Aye. 4's not bad on the 360, but I think that first three are iconic. The second one for me, because it's an Naomi game, it just will always feel like a Dreamcast game. Plus the fact that the guy who made it didn't even want it to go out on PlayStation 2, and it was kind of done behind his back. Like, apparently it was like a bunch of kind of coders that worked at Tecmo at the time had done like this kind of, they said it was like a kind of test code. Jason was telling me about it, and it was like a test port, but he didn't give the blessing for it to get released, and then it came out behind his back, and he was raging because he didn't want it to come out on PlayStation. And the port on PS2 it's got extra content and lovely lighting, but the palette's dull and the jaggies are horrendous. But Dead or Alive 2, the limited edition version that came out in Japan is by far the way to go.
Yeah.
Gorgeous case art as well. Kasumi and is it, how do you say her name again? Amy. They're on the cover, and it's that kind of nice shimmery kind of effect it as well. It's a slightly thicker jewel case as well on that one. It's not the kind of standard, it's slightly thicker, and just gorgeous. All the extra stages, extra costumes and stuff like that's in there. And in the third game, that legendary Aerosmith, 9 Lives, absolutely brilliant. The intro, watching that, I remember seeing that in Virgin Megastore in Buchanan Street as well. Just walking in the Xbox demo pods ahead of launch, and I was like, what the hell is this? It's like, it was a step up again from DOA 2. So, the first 3 are just sensational.
Yeah, I feel like DOA 3 just felt like another generation on from DOA 2. It's like in a different league to what we were seeing on everything else at the time. I remember looking at I think it's Ryu Hayabusa's costume. He's got like the chainmail one, and I remember thinking, Jesus, the detail on that is outrageous. But yeah, it all started obviously with the Model 2 arcade game, but then the Sega Saturn port, and of course when Dead or Alive Ultimate came out to the Xbox, which port did they choose to base it on? Well, they based it on the Saturn version, which speaks volumes about how good this port is. It's fantastic.
It's absolutely solid, mate. It's it's fast, it's fluid, high resolution, looks glorious, sounds great, plays well. Again, I don't know what it goes for on import, but
it's fairly cheap because it's fairly common.
It's
quite successful. So it's very affordable. So if you are a Saturn collector, definitely pick it up. I think I haven't looked for a long time, but I'm sure it goes for less than a tenner.
Which is an absolute steal, for a game of that quality.
Yeah,
it's
like Virtua Fighter 2 and Virtua Fighter. Those games, it goes for the similar amount. And as you say, the level of quality you're getting from there.
For a tenner.
Yeah,
jeez. I mean, can't you get 2 Big Mac meals for a tenner?
Not anymore.
Not anymore, mate. So there you go.
Oh, but that's Dead or Alive, and I think that's the end of the heavy hitters for a while. So we've got Anarchy in a Nippon, which we have mentioned before, and we'll cover that oddity off in the next episode. Same with Zero Divide, which it's not as obscure. I think a few people know it. The mech-based fighter came out end of '97. Savaki,
definitely better than Rise of the Robots.
Yeah, yes it is. Savaki came out April '98, and that's Cage Fighter. I do enjoy that one, but it's another oddball one, especially since you haven't got any real characters' names. And I'm going to murder the name of this one. This is Toryu Densetsu Elendori. So it's a fighting game, a 3D fighting game where you ride dragons. Actually came out in January 1999. The only reviews I could find for that were in Dreamcast magazines, funny enough.
Aye?
Yeah. But we come to the last one, the very last 3D fighting game. And I think it's quite ironic, actually, mate, because the Sega Saturn launched with a 3D fighting game in Virtua Fighter, the game that spearheaded the whole genre and changed the fighting industry. And it ended with a 3D fighting game. This is the last commercial release for the Sega Saturn. It's none other than Final Fight Revenge. Shaking your head.
My thoughts on this have been well publicised already. I think Resident SD remembered me going, it's absolute shite. and I know you're a fan of it. I think it's the fact that it needs a 4 meg RAM cartridge, and I cannot see why it needs it. It's bizarre. I mean, obviously playing on that kind of Final Fight license, and got those characters that we love: Guy, Cody, Hager, Sodom,
Burger.
Big Bill, the copper, and things like that. But it's no great, mate. It does a job. It's got its kind of. I try to be really nice about it here. I'm trying to think. I don't want to completely destroy it.
Go for it.
It has its merit. I just think the characters look odd. The animations are clunky. hit mechanics are shocking. It's just. I remember I'd never played it in the day, and I was never that. I obviously got my 4 meg RAM cartridge back, and I'd heard about it back in the day, but I'd never ever played it. And I just remember putting it in the firmware and going, "What the fuck is this?" It's like you'd seen screenshots of it, and at that point you're thinking it's like, "Oh, it's a Final Fight version of Street Fighter EX." No, it's not. No, it's no for me. It's no for me, mate. I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, I'm a bit of an apologist for it. I do enjoy it. I paid for it a few times since I got my Fenrir because, yeah, I've moved on from the Saturn at this point back in the day, and I missed it on release. And obviously, it very quickly went right up in value. So I only paid it. I only paid it last year on the Fenrir, and like Mac McMuscles, I'm an apologist for this because it's just, for me, it's just so goofy and so silly that it's more appealing than Virtua Fighter Kids in that way, because Virtua Fighter Kids is mostly serious, albeit, the characters are jokey and the backgrounds are jokey, but the actual fighting is just Virtua Fighter 2 light and a bit distorted. Whereas Final Fight Revenge is just pure stupidity. I mean, if you're playing as EDE and you get your special bar up and you do down, forward and the kicks, and then he turns into a car and starts running you over, or like...
I mean, what is that? It's really, man.
The sirens and everything. It's it's like the stuff in there is just like, you can't take it seriously. It's like the last boss, as I said before in the other podcast, on a previous podcast. Last boss is a zombie version of the boss from the original Final Fight, and when you beat him, they have a credit scene where the zombie boss is doing a Thriller style dance, and it's just it's just so silly. And it's like, if you take away the fact that it's not meant to be, if you take away the fact that it's Final Fight, it's just basically Final Fight in a joke 3D fighting game. And it's not, obviously, we want either a proper Final Fight or B, a proper Final Fight fighting game. It's neither of those two things. So of course you're going to come away and say it's a pile of shit. But if you look at it from the prism of, this is just a bunch of guys that have the Final Fight characters having a laugh, I think it's a riot.
I mean, how could they not just have ported Final Fight to the Saturn? Like, alright, it's an R2D game, but I mean, Final Fight CD, which we love on the Mega Drive Mini 2 and stuff like that, I just love playing that. It's the reason why I've got a Mini 2, but it's like, just give us, just port Final Fight. Don't go put this rubbish.
Well, they could have at least given us Street Fighter EX or something, I guess.
It's just madness. To think that was the last one. You started the journey with an industry-changing juggernaut of a franchise, and you left us with a version of Final Fight where a guy turns into a car and flashes his siren.
You fight a zombie version.
And you fight a zombie version of the final boss who does the Thriller dance. What chance have you got?
But no, that's the Saturn's 3D fighting game journey, mate. I mean, there's not as many 3D fighting games as there are 2D games, but I think I think there's a few videos going around on YouTube. I think it's the only time that this is the most comprehensive list that I've seen of anywhere. I mean, I know we've just touched on the games that we'll cover later on, which are the weird and wonderful, but I think these are the milestone ones. And I think overall, it's a fantastic lineup. I mean, mainly the Sega entries plus Dead or Alive. The others you can kind of take or leave, but those Sega games, pure gold.
Aye, I mean, there was a video that came out that apparently was meant to be an in-depth look at all the Sega Saturn 3D fighting games, and they missed out stuff like Virtua Fighter Kids and Dead or Alive, but they put GVC Victory Boxing in there. Yeah.
I mean, boxing games are another, not in this genre.
No, we're talking about the the classic arcade one-on-one 3D fighting game, which was spawned by Virtua Fighter. As you said, mate, I think it is a comprehensive list. There's some misses in there, but what they did right, they did really right. Stuff like Last Bronx, VF2, Fighting Vipers, are just technical marvels as well. As we said, VF2 for what it did, bringing in high resolution mode, 60 FPS. Fighting Vipers, okay, isn't high resolution mode, but has probably some of the nicest lighting effects of any beat 'em up on this list. You know what I
Yep.
mean? And then obviously, Last Bronx just took that advancement of VDP 1 and 2 working together to create almost real 3D looking backgrounds that fooled a lot of people. You'll still see narratives that are spun, saying Last Bronx, uses full 3D backgrounds on the Saturn. It's like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't, but it's testament to how honed they had got at working with VDP 1 and 2 together to create, those backgrounds that were a step above Virtua Fighter 2's Parallax.
No, absolutely, mate. The engineering and the coding behind there is ingenious. Even more so than Virtua Fighter 2. We talked earlier in the podcast about how Tekken, you really did feel like that you were in a diorama almost, with just like you're just in a box with painted. Whereas Virtua Fighter 2 made it seem 3D, and Last Bronx just took that to the next level. And what I love about Last Bronx, it's often compared to Soul Edge or Soul Blade, and one thing that we both love Soul Calibur, right? Huge fans of Soul Calibur. The problem with both of those games in the arcade is that they run on PlayStation hardware, and this is true of the Soul Blade PlayStation port. It runs at 30 frames per second, and even though Virtua Fighter 1 runs at 30 frames per second, that's always been palatable to me. But otherwise, I don't think any other game should really run at anything other than 60. I think most games in this, like Dead or Alive, 60, Last Bronx, 60, Fighters Mega Mix, 60, Fighting Vipers, 60, Virtua Fighter Kids, 60. They all run at 60 frames per second. And that's the differentiator for me between Last Bronx and Soul Edge, is that 60, is that frame rate, which makes Last Bronx such a more fluid. And that's why it's, we talked about the punish game in that, and that's why it's so important, because your timings have got to be spot on.
Aye. Soul Blade, I think, gets a lot more credit. One, because people instantly go, oh, what an intro.
Oh, what an intro, though.
It's like,
to shine!
We got free. I don't know. I'm just making up sounds.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what the words are either.
Aye. Whatever. Don't know. But aye, it's got that kind of CG intro with that music is great. But you've also got the kind of, obviously you had the mission battle mode, which was in Soul Calibur.
Yeah.
There was that kind of an earlier version of that kind of the battle mode, the world battle mode that was in Soul Blade as well. So it had a lot more content. But aye, it was lovely enough to play.
Yeah,
but it didn't look anywhere near what Last
and it
Bronx
has
was like.
proper 3D backgrounds as well.
I remember, was it Rock's stage? It had the kind of the grass.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
it was kind of blown, and that was quite impressive at that time to see that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the 3D backgrounds are impressive, but it running up, and because there's so much, it's so dense. Whereas Virtua Fighter was just the two characters in the ring. I think because it's so dense and there's so much on there, but it runs at half the frame rate. If you're playing, when you come away from, even coming away from Soul Calibur, comparing the arcade to the home version, straight away you just think, ooh, it running at half a frame rate is, nasty to me.
Aye, and I think it's testament as well to how much they managed to get out the Saturn, all these arcade ports. And these are Model 2 arcade ports, 60 FPS.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Tecmo with Dead or Alive managed 60 frames per second. You compare Dead or Alive on the Saturn to the PlayStation version, you can see which one is the more faithful to the arcade original.
So basically, if Namco had put Soul Blade on the Saturn, it would have ran at 60 FPS.
I reckon I could have got it on the Saturn at 60 FPS.
Aye.
They wouldn't have had 3D backgrounds. It would have been. It would have
Get a big wooden spoon, just stir the pot.
Yeah, I reckon it would have had to have parallax scrolling instead of those 3D objects, though.
Aye, might not get the wavy grass, mate.
No, but yes, mate, that is the Sega Saturn's 3D fighter journey, all summed up in about 2 hours. I don't think we've missed any, so that was quite the ride.
It was, mate. We've still got the anomalies to go through, the rarities as well, but I think that one, there's probably a good few in there that maybe folk haven't heard of, but it was good to kind of go through these in order of release as well, and you can see as you're going through it, just that quality ramping up each time, you know what I mean?
All the way up to Final Fight Revenge.
And then they just basically took a dump at the end. Well, that's Capcom, mate. You know what I mean? Sega and Tecmo were fine. Then Capcom came along and gave us that.
Oh, mate, it's been a pleasure. Well, do you know what? We'll throw it to our listeners. Do you love Final Fight Revenge? Do you hate
comments?
Do you hate Final Fight Revenge? Let us know. Is there anything that we've missed off this list? Are you looking forward to the Obscure Fighters episode? Just let us know in the comments below. Get in touch via Twitter. You can catch me at Swooper_D. You can catch James wherever he is at the Segaholic. You can catch the account at Sega Guys. Until next time, we will see you on the Sega side.
Sega!
触らないで壊れやすい記憶に触らないで貴重な体